Hello, welcome back to the Early Bar Football Podcast. And now the eagle-eared and eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that this isn't Owen speaking. This is actually Tang. And so Owen's doing some work for the United View. He's basically on standby for this Ronaldo confirmation. So it's me hosting. I've got Chris, I've got Barnes, and I've got Lynchy with me. And we're going to try and not burn the place down, basically. So fingers crossed. Hopefully this goes well. Who knows? But yeah, one place to start, and that is Ronaldo United. There you go. So I had the other thing up, didn't I? Pain. Shall I start again? I had the wrong ticker up to begin with, but it's fine. We'll keep going.
That was a good start. Keep going.
It was a good start. We can cut this out. We can cut this out. So Ronaldo to United. If you didn't know, Cristiano Ronaldo is coming back to Manchester United. That was confirmed over the weekend, Friday evening, I think it was maybe. And he's done his medical, etc., and he's basically waiting for that announcement video. Chris, what do you think about that as an Arsenal fan and as a Premier League fan?
As an Arsenal fan, obviously, I'm a bit worried with Ronaldo coming back to Man United because, you know, that they are going to be serious contenders, you know, for the league title with Ronaldo back. I mean, all right, it is, you know, more towards a shorter term look as to, you know, how United are going to do and that, but it's definitely a statement to say we're going for the title. And it does put pressure on Solskjaer because, you know, Solskjaer, you know, don't get me wrong, he has done a good job at Man U. You know, he's got them, you know, building up. They're now pretty much looking like the Manchester United of old, where, you know, obviously we saw from the weekend, you know, they managed to grind out a 1-0 win, you know, like they used to under Ferguson and whatnot. But it does put pressure on him to deliver a trophy because that's the only thing he hasn't done at Man United is win a trophy. As a football fan, I am pleased that Ronaldo's back in the Premier League. But a fun story for you, lads. I actually watched. I didn't watch it live, but I was in a bar in Portugal when I watched the game that Ronaldo, you know, played against Man United for Sporting, and Sporting won 3-1, and Ronaldo just absolutely, you know, tore Man United's defense to shreds and whatnot. And like, I think I must have been 7 or 8 then, and even just watching the game, like with a steak sandwich in Portugal, was probably a glass of Coca-Cola in that. Yeah, it was really fun watching him and that. And all right, his game has changed a lot since then because obviously he was a young, like 18-year-old winger back then, and obviously now I can imagine he is probably going to come into Man United to be, you know, the main man, you know, the main number 9 up top, which, you know, they needed a number 9 because I'm not a big fan of Anthony Martial and that, but yeah. Now, as a football fan, I'm pleased that he's back in the Premier League. As an Arsenal fan, I can't wait for him to put 10 past us.
A steak sandwich, is that the national delicacy of Portugal?
It's not. I'd say the national delicacy of Portugal is probably a bottle of Sagres, but obviously I was too young to drink that.
Of course. Barnes, so Chris talked about, you know, he was there when Ronaldo tore United apart that first time, and it sort of goes to a point where I think the magical Graham Souness made a point where he said, this isn't the same Ronaldo that United signed when he was 18. Do you agree? And what are your thoughts on that?
Do I agree with Graham? I feel like I'm on dodgy territory already with do I agree with Graham Souness. What I will say is that people, when I listen to sort of people talking about European football and talking about Juventus last couple of seasons and Ronaldo playing for them, I know he scored, I think it's 29 Serie A goals. I think he beat Lukaku last season to the Golden Boot in Serie A. But he's actually made Juventus worse. Like, Juventus haven't looked like challenging for the Champions League while Ronaldo's been there. And Manchester United signing Ronaldo, I completely agree with Chris that it's a brilliant signing for the league. It's exciting, you know, Ronaldo, all the sort of everything he brings along with him. It'd be really interesting to see him back in the league. And I'm sure he will score probably 15, 20 goals. But I'm not sure he's what man. You know, can he play midfield? Is he going to replace Fred? They already have Cavani. He's already on, you know, that sort of older striker experience. Greenwood started the season really well. Obviously, from a PR, you know, their stock rose a lot when Ronaldo came in, and that's important for the club. But I don't think it's the best. Is it? Obviously, in the short term, it's going to be a good deal, but I don't know. I don't think he's going to push him on to the Prem, especially not still while Solskjaer's still manager. What I will say as well, someone linked Ronaldo's a bit of a siege weapon now. He's a bit of like a trebuchet. Like he has to be wheeled into place. He can't run anymore. Like that's how sort of the kind of player he is now. A pure penalty box player. I'm not sure how that's going to play out in the Premier League, where pressing and things like that. It's a high-paced league, and I think he's going to maybe find it a bit more difficult than some people predict. But Graham Souness was probably a bit harsh on him.
So yeah, Lynchy. Ronaldo's obviously a great signing, but is it what United needed? Was it a case of the romanticism of Ronaldo coming back sort of took over, and they couldn't say no, really? Do you think they should have not let him go, but just sort of waited and actually got a centre defensive mid, which we've talked about on the pod before? That is kind of what United need. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I feel like it's sort of deflected their attention away from what they really need, like you mentioned, the centre midfielder, because that is key. Like Barnes already mentioned, they do already have Cavani there. I mean, it's not like, obviously now Cavani's not going to probably get much game time with Ronaldo being the main man. And the amount of difference between goals they'd probably get. I mean, Cavani did really well last season, especially the second half of the season. I don't know whether it will push them on to the title, but I feel like a centre midfielder might well have done that because of the lack of quality they do have in that area. I mean, there's no doubting that Ronaldo will get goals. I mean, like Barnes said, he beat Lukaku to the Serie A Golden Boot last season, and he will. I think he will suit Man United's style of play, but I think there's a question mark around their creativity. I mean, for instance, if he went to City, he would get so many more goals. I think he would at Man United because of the amount of creative players and chances they make. But I feel like Man United, well, bits of the game I saw yesterday, I mean, they really lacked that cutting edge up front in terms of creating chances. And in the end, it took a bit of a magic moment, a tiny bit of luck, I'd say, before the foul for the Greenwood goal. I feel like it has diverted attention away from Man United from what they really need in the last few days of the transfer window and getting that centre midfielder. Because obviously just the baggage that Ronaldo carries in terms of press, media, PR, everything's been focused on that. And they're obviously trying to focus on getting the deal done over the line the last 24 hours. I feel like it's too late now, I think, for Man United to get a centre midfielder that that would help really push them on. It'd probably be a bit of a botched deal, quickly get it through the door before the end of the window. And that's mainly because of Ronaldo, everyone's attention being focused on the Ronaldo deal.
Yeah, and an open question for you boys. Did you ever think he was going to City?
I honestly thought he was at one point. Yeah.
Yeah. No, honestly, I did. Like, especially with Mendes pulling the strings in the background. I think Mendes. I think it all spiraled from when Messi left Barcelona. I think Mendes thought, "Oh, I could have a bit of a payday here. Why don't I try and put a few feelers?" Because I can imagine Mendes probably would have said to Ronaldo, "Oh, Messi's gone to PSG. He might win a Champions League. Do you really think you're going to win a Champions League at Juventus? So." Yeah, I think he would have gone to City, but like obviously, like the stories that obviously quite a lot of people, including Sir Alex Ferguson, pretty much got in his ear and said, "Look, do you want to tarnish your legacy at Man United by joining?" I wouldn't say City are one of Man United's biggest rivals. I still think the Man United fans hate Liverpool and Leeds more than Man City, but obviously, in terms of like a newer rival as such, that obviously he would have been hated, especially by Josh Leafy, by the way.
Yeah, and Josh isn't here, and Owen's not here, sadly, so we don't get that Man United view, biased view potentially on this podcast today. But I will say Josh Leafy has been sending so many voice notes into the group chat of Viva Ronaldo and that chant, and it's kind of driving me insane. To be quite frank, I don't know about you boys, but he is just constantly all day Viva Ronaldo, running down the wing, and
is it worse than Hey Jude thing?
Oh, I don't know about that. I think Hey Jude will always have a special place in my heart.
Now they're playing it at Brighton. He likes Hey Jude. No, it's great song in it. Now they've got it on the MX.
Hey Jude. I've always loved it. I've always loved it. So we'll leave Ronaldo there for now. And now Owen does this thing where he can change the thing on the bottom really smoothly. And I've also just done it. There you go. We're going to talk about the Premier League, what's happened this weekend in the Premier League. And I feel there's only one place to start. And that was the Arsenal game, Chris. And I see you wearing your Oxford shirt today. Was that a conscious decision I think you made?
Well, let's just start by saying what a win for Oxford United on Saturday. 3-1 at home to Lincoln. James Henry, the League One GOAT, as he's well known as, with a hat trick. But yeah, obviously I'm digressing a bit from Arsenal. Yeah, it was men versus boys stuff again. I mean, just picture Darth Vader against the younglings in Star Wars Episode 3. It was like that all over again. I mean, I pretty much looked at that starting lineup at Arsenal and just thought, there is no way Arsenal are coming away from the match with a point, let alone a win. When I saw that back three of Rob Holding, Callum Chambers, and Sead Kolasinac playing away at the Etihad against the Premier League champions, one of the favourites for the title again this season, it was only going to end one way. And
you said about an hour before when the lineups got announced, 5-0 City, and you were spot on. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I said Arsenal were doomed. I mean, what was it? They didn't want Kolasinac last season, and he got loaned out to Schalke and pretty much helped sped up their relegation from the Bundesliga. We need to remember Callum Chambers has been relegated twice from the Premier League with Middlesbrough and Fulham the first time in recent seasons, and Rob Holding's not good enough. I mean, Rob Holding and Callum Chambers are nowhere near, the England setup. I reckon Elliot Moore and Jordan Forderly are more closer to the England setup. For those of you that aren't Oxford fans, they are Oxford centre backs. They are amazing players. But yeah,
if you're listening, Elliot and Jordan,
yeah, hopefully they're listening, but no, probably not. But yeah, and then yet again, Granit Xhaka has let Arsenal Football Club down. I mean, that's the thing. It annoys me because a lot of the backlash I'm seeing from the Arsenal fans, it's Arteta's fault. All right, yes, Arteta does have to take a bit of responsibility, but you just look at the way the club is being run. It's absolutely rotten to the core. You look at the recruitment. Arsenal have spent the most currently out of all the Premier League teams, and they haven't even improved the team. It's about. I mean, all right, don't get me wrong. Obviously, injuries haven't helped, and obviously Ben White, testing positive for COVID and that, but. You spent all that money, and yet you've played a back three of Chambers, Holding, and Kolasinac. That's not. You haven't really spent to improve that defense, have you? Yeah. To be fair, Arsenal got what they deserved, and obviously, just going back to, going back to players as well. Obviously, I put myself through the whole 90 minutes and whatnot, and credit to the Arsenal fans that. I mean, credit to all the Arsenal fans, whether it was the fans that left after Xhaka got sent off, or it was the fans, that stayed till the end, were chanting throughout the whole game and that. But what I didn't like to see was, you got Alexander Lacazette already come on as a sub, but instead of going and clapping or, getting abuse from the support, which, would have been right, because obviously depends what kind of abuse it was. But yeah, he just walked down the tunnel. I know Kieran Tierney sort of gave him a bit of a look saying, what are you doing, Alex? You should really, come over here, clap the fans, no matter how much, they're going to criticize you because, end of the day, they spent their hard-earned money to go and watch that. Or Arsenal, whatever Arsenal produced on Saturday, they went and go watch that. And, to be fair, the fans were brilliant. They were chanting throughout the whole game. And they was even clapping the players at the end, and I just think there's too many egos in that Arsenal dressing room that think they're better than what they actually are. So yeah, I wasn't surprised. Obviously, like you said, I predicted a 5-0, and yeah, dread it, run for it, destiny arrives all the same, as Thanos said.
I feel you've really let out some pent up energy there, Chris. You've spoken for about 4 minutes straight. Barnes, you actually went to an actual real life football game, which was huge.
I did, yes.
About that first before Premier League review.
Yeah, I was talking about Manchester City and Arsenal. Now we're going through Guiseley against Gloucester City. Obviously supporting the local boys, Gloucester City. They lost 2-1. Went 1-0 down early, and then came back. But yeah, it was a good game. It was nice to be at football. I mean, I think we've been talking about, transfers and all these zillions of pounds being spent by clubs. It was just nice to go back to a kind of absolutely horrific football match, rubbish ground, cheap beer, it was nice. It was good.
Were
I enjoyed
Gloucester
it.
better than Arsenal?
Marginally, they kept 11 men on the pitch. I think there's something to be said for that. I think.
What do you
on
think of the
Arsenal,
Xhaka red card?
I think it was a red card. I feel sorry. I really, really want to stand up for Granit Xhaka like so often because I feel he's one of these players that is. I don't know if it's just Arsenal fans that really, have a problem with him, or generally people think he's an awful player. I tend to think whenever I watch him, I think he's quite good. I think he's normally very influential in games. I think his passes are quite progressive. I think as a player, he tends to fit into that sort of position where he's a bit like Jorginho is better, but because they're not DMs, cams, or box-to-box midfielders, everyone's like, what do they do? What does Granit Xhaka do? What does Jorginho do? It's progressive pass and it's moving the ball. They're just not your sort of typical centre mids. I think Granit Xhaka gets put into that sort of, we don't know what he does. And then obviously when he makes mistakes, like that and getting red cards. Having said that, they were going to lose anyway. I'm pretty sure that had no impact whatsoever on the game. They're already 2-0 down at this point. As Chris alluded to, I think a lot of it is on Arteta, to be honest. I know the club is run very poorly, but Kolasinac should not be starting in that. What is the point? You're going to sell him. You've loaned him out last season. Why on earth would you then start him? Callum Chambers, he could have sold him. Arteta's had time. He doesn't have to pick Rob Holding. He sent William Saliba out on loan. He could have brought him back in.
Yeah.
He's got other players available. I mean, he did move to a 5 at the back, which I did suggest he do. Nice to see that worked out well, and Arteta's listening to the early path. But I think a lot of it actually is on Arteta, to be honest. And I know I think we've all talked about this before, where clubs hiring managers with little to no experience, especially clubs like Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester United, is, in my opinion, absolute madness. And I think this is just an example that Arteta, at the end of the day, however good a coach is, he's just not got that experience. He's just not got it, and he's got no CV to fall back on. What do we expect from Arteta? We don't know. I have no idea what because there's nothing. We haven't seen anything from him before. So I think Arsenal in a real tight spot. But what do you think, Lynch? I guess you're the Arsenal
just
fans.
move us straight on to Lynchy.
I feel sorry for you.
What are your thoughts? Straight on to Lynchy.
Well, on the Xhaka red card, I mean, I sort of tend to agree with Barnes, but he is one of them players where he does progress the ball forward quite well when you compare him to someone like, it's not exactly a good comparison or good player to compare to, but like Mohamed El Nene. But he is one of them players you look to in games for Arsenal who to provide something and move the ball forward. But those moments of madness just keep on coming up. Like, why you're 2-0 down away to Man City, the Etihad. No matter how he is a player that he does always put in his all, even though it doesn't look like he always does because he's quite slow. So it looks like he's not trying. But you can tell he does care. But there's no excuse for moments of madness like that. Like I said, you're 2-0 down away to City. You're running the risk of getting a red card by going 2 feet off the ground. There's just no need to. And he's one of them players you look to for their experience in those types of situations. I mean, we all saw he had a really good World Cup. We know he has it in him. But then he does that and you're just thinking, why? There's no need for it. But it also does, I think it does bring into question Arteta's his disciplinary methods, because I think we've gotten the most red cards by far since Arteta's come in. Just players just making reckless decisions. I mean, obviously, I know David Luiz last season got a fair few red cards, but it does bring into question, how is he letting the players get away with this time in, time out, again and again? Just ridiculous amount of red cards. I mean, on the game itself, I mean, like Chris said, it was absolutely no surprise. I mean, I was expecting, even after the West Brom game, it made no difference to that win, but I was expecting at least 3-0 City. I mean, there's no way we were ever going to score against them for a start. But I tend to be on the side of blaming Arteta, to be honest. If you like Barnes said, I mean, you're playing Kolasinac, who's got relegated with Schalke, playing Callum Chambers relegated with Fulham and Middlesbrough, but you're letting William Saliba go out on loan, who had a half-decent loan spell last season at Nice, and he hasn't really done anything wrong. He hasn't had a chance to prove it, whereas Callum Chambers and Kolasinac have had years to prove it, and they haven't proved anyone anything. And so that makes me think, it's sort of the blame's on Arteta. I mean, for instance, you're hearing today that Ainsley Maitland-Niles wants to leave. He's come out and put on Instagram and he wants to leave and play somewhere who feels like he's wanted. And then you hear in the club now want to keep him. I mean, I just don't think Arteta's man management is proving anything good at the moment. Like when situations like that come out, when I think, well, for instance, as well, Cedric at the weekend, I think he had 0 successful tackles or recoveries, 43% passing accuracy throughout the game. And you think surely Maitland-Niles could do better than that. So why is Arteta not giving him a chance? But I mean, the first 3 games, I mean, I don't think as an Arsenal fan anyone would have expected anything against Chelsea or City. They are title contenders. It still goes back to that Brentford game. If we had 3 points at this point, I don't think Arsenal fans would be like absolutely fuming. They'd give him more of a chance because it's not like you'd expect anything from them games anyway. We're miles away from them teams, but the Brentford game just immediately put the club in a bad situation. First game of the season, but we've got this better run of fixtures now. I think we've got Norwich, Palace, Aston Villa. So obviously, I'm willing to give him a bit more time with those fixtures. But like I said on the previous podcast, if we're not winning all of these games, that's pretty much the expectation now. I think he does have to leave with all these other things going on behind the scenes with Maitland-Niles. This little cracks, bigger cracks are starting to show now, which just doesn't support him anyway.
Yeah, and going to the Ainsley Maitland-Niles things, if people haven't seen this, on his Instagram story, he posted, all I want to do is go where I'm wanted and where I'm going to play crying emoji, crying emoji, crying emoji. So 3 crying emojis, which is many, 3 too many, potentially. And he also added Arsenal in that, which is absolutely huge. I mean, can you imagine that happening for any other team in the Premier League? It sounds like a very Arsenal thing to happen. It's probably one for the documentary, don't you think, Chris and Lynchy, for the All or Nothing?
Well, I've been watching the first few episodes of that documentary, that's for sure. Covering these few games, I don't know how many games would be in one episode, but it'd be
exactly.
A horror show.
I think, go on, Chris, go on.
I was going to say, like for all the other fans, it's going to be like the best comedy show ever. Whereas for Arsenal fans, it's going to be like the worst horror film you ever see.
I think it'll be a real insight into how Arsenal is run and the real, just what happens at Arsenal, because it just seems to be an absolute comedy roadshow. I'm expecting Michael McIntyre to come out at some point as a host, but it is absolutely crazy. There were other games in the Premier League. I mean, I didn't watch many of them because I was out doing bottomless brunch with Lynchy and Chris, by the way. So
please drink responsibly.
If anyone is watching. We'll touch on Liverpool-Chelsea because I know we did watch that round Leafy's house. Did you, Chris? What do you think of the game?
I thought it was a good game. I thought it was an entertaining game between obviously 2 very good sides. I mean, obviously the red card did change the game, and I can see like obviously the red card. You know, it's a bit of a grey area. I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh yeah, it's a red card," and then a lot of people are saying, "Oh no," but penalty was more than enough. I mean, it's one of them that the ref, obviously Anthony Taylor, he's gone by the letter of the law, where end of the day, Reece James's handballed it on the line. He's got to give the red card because, I mean, you also got to look, if Reece James didn't put his hand in the way, the ball's going to go in the back of the net. There's no way he's going to, unless, he's got very good limbs on him and that. There's no way he's going to be able to flick the ball away from the goal with his right leg at all. So I can understand why Anthony Taylor gave the red card, but I mean, it just goes to show how far away Arsenal are compared to a team like Chelsea. Chelsea played brilliantly with 10 men, and that they defended immense. Obviously, they had an outborn Lukaku as well, and he done quite well holding the ball up and bringing other players into play. I mean, that header from Kai Havertz, by the way, was phenomenal. How he's managed to even get his head sort of into that position and loop it over at Alisson. I mean, you could question whether Liverpool should have had maybe someone on the back post, maybe, but maybe then again, probably didn't think no one's going to score a header like that. But yeah, and again, I don't think Liverpool played too badly. Just couldn't find a way through. Just a immense Chelsea defence. Yeah,
and Barnes. Chris touched on that red card. Chris is always going to be biased as a striker, aren't you, Chris? That it was definitely a red card. Barnes, as a pillar of a defence, as you are. What are your thoughts on the red card for Reece James?
That's extremely generous, thank you. Pillar of defence. Not sure I've been described. I think I was described as that maybe in the our local teams, like under 15 when I was playing for them. I might have been described as that, but yeah. As on the red card, I think the red card's harsh. 100% a penalty. I mean, like Chris says, at the end of the day, he stops the ball going in the goal with his arm. Like, accidental or not, it's got a bit. What I would say is, though, if I could change the rules of football, I'd rather penalty goal. Just give a goal, because it was at the end of the day, the ball was going to go in the net anyway. So, like, and if you think about it, like in the World Cup a few years ago when Suarez did that handball, that would have just been a goal, and then you wouldn't get a player's handball not on the line. But I think the red card, it's a difficult one. It's a bit unlucky. I'm surprised the Chelsea players got that sort of aggravated over it, because I think, as Chris said, Anthony Taylor, it probably is just going by the laws of the game. But yeah, I changed the rules. Give a penalty goal, yellow card, carry on. But yeah, it was a good game, good performance from Chelsea. Again, I thought Liverpool were maybe could have capitalised more when Chelsea had 10 men, but yeah, struggled a bit. But yeah, it was a good game.
Yeah, it was. And Lynchy, was it a case for you of Liverpool not finishing off their chances as being quite poor in the final third, or was it Chelsea being very good defensively?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of both. I mean, I think Mendy played really well. I think that was the highest amount of saves he had to make in a Chelsea game since he's joined. So, I mean, Liverpool did put the pressure on, but like Chrissy said, Chelsea did defend really well even when they went down to 10 men. It's just an example to other teams how you can play well and not just let the floodgates open when you go down to 10 men. But yeah, Liverpool definitely did put the pressure on, but it never really looked like the floodgates were going to open in terms of goals. You know, Chelsea always looked solid at the back, and I think it was a fair result overall, 1-1 draw. Chelsea played really well. Liverpool just didn't quite have that cutting edge on the day.
Yeah, and Brighton lost, so we won't talk about Brighton, but we will talk about Man United and Wolves, because I think Owen and Leif would probably shout at us if we didn't talk about it. And myself, Chris, and Lynchy did crowd round a phone outside of Turtle Bay in Oxford after bottomless brunch and watched part of the game. Chris, thoughts on Man United from what you remember?
Well, first of all, shout out to Titch for providing the great service on his phone and that. And also, like, also, you know, I will shout Mason Greenwood as well. Lovely, you know, tribute celebration to the late great Chadwick Boseman, obviously taken far too soon from us last year. And that, I mean, it was interesting. Obviously, I followed that XG. I can't remember what the official Twitter account's called, but obviously I now follow that XG Twitter account, and Wolves actually had the higher XG. I think they had over 2, whereas Man U only had like 0.6. So obviously that tells you that Wolves had the better chances. I mean, to be fair, we did see that one from Saiss where obviously De Gea's made that incredible double save. I mean, the second save's unbelievable. I mean, really, Saiss should have absolutely buried that chance, and De Gea shouldn't have been given a chance to save it. But that second save was incredible. And again, like, you know, obviously taken away by Man United hatred, as you will. Like, it's just great to see a young Englishman like Mason Greenwood, you know, scoring goals for Manchester United. It's a bit disappointing that Southgate didn't pick him for England, but I think they did say he obviously did call up Greenwood and had a conversation with him, and it's noticeable to see that Greenwood hasn't been called up for the under-21. So whether he just wants to give Greenwood this opportunity, you know, to work more, you know, for, you know, on the training ground at Manchester United, you know, under Solskjaer and whatnot. But yeah, because like for me, Greenwood's an unbelievable talent. You know, he reminds me so much of a Robin van Persie, where you just get him in between, you know, the post of the goal, and he'll just put it into the back of the net. And obviously, another contentious point and another grey area was obviously the challenge that led towards the goal. Obviously, Paul Pogba on Neves, and to be fair, like, obviously the Man United hatred in me again was like, 100% a foul, leg breaker, send off Paul Pogba and that. But it's just, it was, to be honest, it was Neves' fault end of the day, because obviously Neves played the ball in that, and he sort of, in that split second, he sort of went to go run towards the ball thinking, I'm going to start possession. He sort of realised, actually, I'm not going to have possession here. And then he just sort of fell to the ground and started, you know, rolling around on the ground. It's kind of like, well, you should have went down as soon as Pogba, you know, went in for the challenge. I mean, I don't think Pogba touched him that much. He might have, you know, scraped the shin, but like Neves didn't help the ref in, you know, that point. And in all honesty, I think obviously the football side of me would say, yeah, I think it was the right decision to play on, and Wolves should have dealt with it. End of the day, they should have dealt with it.
Exactly. That's an interesting point. Barnes, this result now leaves Wolves in the relegation zone. 3 losses out of 3. They haven't scored this season. Do you think they'll be okay? Considering you watched it on a screen that was more than a width of a phone, I thought I'd ask you this question as opposed to us. You were probably more sober than us as well.
Partially. I had been to the cricket the day before, so I was very hungover. But do I think Wolves will be okay? I'm worried about Wolves. Mainly Raul Jimenez. I don't want to go in on him and say, he's not just because he's obviously had that horrible injury. Was it last season where he had the fractured skull? And I think it takes a lot for him to even, be back on the pitch. So no criticism on him, but I don't think he's going to bag the goals that he has in recent seasons. I think if you actually look at Wolves scorers, Jimenez he's scored most of their goals. Traore is a magnificent player, but he doesn't contribute much in terms of goals. And I think you saw some of his finishing is not the best. However, on the upside, I was impressed with Trincao. I thought he played very well. I thought in general, Wolves' play was good. It's hard to tell, I suppose, on a one-off game whether Manchester United were bad or Wolves were good. But I think they've got something. I think we might talk about later about transfers, but I think another striker should be on the list for Wolves. On the red card, I just want to maybe challenge Chris on this, on the Pogba one. I'm not saying I don't think it's a red card. I don't even think it's a yellow card, but I think it's 100% a foul. And it really annoys me, this thing. Like, I know, S. Howell's written football. Like, Neves, he thought he was going to get the ball, so he stayed up. Like, but that doesn't mean it's not a foul. That has zero to do with whether it's a foul or not. Neves' reaction. It's like if you get tapped in the box or someone kicks you in the box, you don't go down. That doesn't mean it's not a penalty, and you never see referees giving that. So I think in a similar vein, that was a foul, and the referee should have given it. And I know when you look at the images and sort of zoomed in and things like that, of course it looks way worse than it is. And I don't know what Graham Souness talking about saying it's a leg breaker. I think he probably just tapped his shin pad, but it was a foul, and I think Wolves can feel a bit hard done by, especially as Chris made a good point as well about the XG. Man United really did not have that much, and I think they got a lot to thank Mason Greenwood for a good finish again. And as I said earlier, I'm slightly worried about how Greenwood is going to progress with Ronaldo potentially coming in and taking his spot.
And that is a really nice segue, because that was going to be my question to Lynchy. Ronaldo joining United, he's obviously going to be the main man, the number 9, for the next couple of years, you would imagine. Do you think that stunts Greenwood's growth, or do you think learning off one of the greatest goal scorers of our time will be good for him? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that it definitely is that risk, because like we mentioned earlier, like Ronaldo is obviously going to be the main man because of his history and the amount of goals he scored wherever he's gone. There definitely is that risk. I mean, as an England fan, it does worry me slightly because Greenwood's had a really good start to the season. He's got Man U out of jail the last 2 games, really, hasn't he? With 2 sort of moments of brilliance and great finishes. I think it'd be good for him as well, obviously, to learn off Ronaldo. I mean, he's one of the greatest, if not arguably the greatest player of all time. But there is that risk that he's potentially going to be the one to drop out. I mean, it feels like Pogba and Fernandes won't be dropped because of the high caliber of players they are. So Greenwood potentially is in the firing line in terms of dropping out. I mean, obviously you got Sancho as well. It's quite an interesting situation. I mean, they've got a lot of attacking talent. I mean, you've heard Dan James potentially going to Leeds on a permanent or loan deal today. So that's one gone. But then also you got Marcus Rashford as well. So there is potentially a risk, pretty much a guaranteed risk, that one of those 3 young English players is going to lose their spot in favour of Ronaldo. In terms of the game in general, yesterday, I mean, it doesn't really look convincing from Man U's perspective in terms of their title challenge. I mean, I think they were still quite poor. From Wolves' perspective, I mean, they have had a tough start to the season, haven't they? I mean, Leicester away, Spurs, and then Man United. I mean, I think we should give the new manager a bit more time, but I think if he doesn't get, sort of similar to us, I mean, you got better run of fixtures now, and if he doesn't start getting results soon, the fans could start questioning him. So yeah, it'd be interesting after the international break.
Absolutely. And I think the Greenwood debate is an interesting one. Personally, I think he's 18, 19 at the minute, I think. And if Ronaldo's there for a couple of years, he'll still only be 21. And, that's really young to be a striker. And he's doing so well at the minute. I think the Ronaldo thing will only be a good thing for him and his development. But I'm not a Man United fan, so Owen and Leafy might disagree with me, or other Man United fans might disagree with me on that. But I think we'll move on, unless anyone has any more to say, but we'll move on to some latest transfer news. And that is that Kylian Mbappe is not going to Real Madrid in the month of August 2021. Real Madrid gave a deadline to PSG. It was a 5 o'clock deadline. I don't know what time zone that would be, 5 p.m. somewhere, for PSG to accept their bid of maybe 170 million pounds, not sure. But PSG didn't accept it. Whether they even responded, I'm not sure. But it looks like that Real Madrid now are sort of holding their weight and holding firm for a January pre-agreement for Kylian Mbappe, instead of sort of pursuing him over the next 24 hours or so. So, Chris, what do you think about that? Do you think that's a good move from Real Madrid or a bad move for PSG because they're not going to get any money off him?
I think the latter. I think it's a bad move from PSG's point of view, because I think you look at Kylian Mbappe and that, and obviously the things that people have heard and that, and he's pretty much set on this. Like you said, it's his dream move to play for Real Madrid, and I think it's a bad move from PSG's point of view, because they could have got a lot of money, for him in this transfer window. And now they're going to lose him on a pre-contract in January. I mean, to be fair, PSG, when he does sort of sign that pre-contract deal in January, PSG could be S-houses, as we like to say, and just decide, go on, Kylian, you're going to just play for the reserve team rest of the season. I mean, obviously, it's interesting because obviously they're still playing him. He scored 2 goals last night, I believe, against Reims, which, let's be honest, the game was overshadowed by the debut of Messi and that. But I also can imagine, obviously, Benzema. I can imagine Benzema, obviously, with him being back in the front set up for the Euros. I can imagine Benzema might have gone in his ear in the summer and just said, "Come on, Kylian, have a couple of years with me at Real Madrid." Because obviously, let's not forget, in the long term, I can imagine Mbappe will probably be a successor to Benzema, because obviously Benzema's in his 30s. It's mad to think Mbappe's still 21, 22. And that it feels like he's been around the game for a long. To be fair, 5 years is a long time in football, and I think he has been around for that long. Obviously, bursting on the scene at Monaco, and obviously helping them, win the title and that incredible Champions League run they had with an amazing squad they had. But yeah, obviously going back to your question, I do think it is. I do think it is a bad move from PSG. I think they should have got this. Let's not forget, like, this is a huge sum of money. Like, what would it? It'd be like the third or fourth most expensive deal like ever in football. And yeah, I think they should have taken the money for him.
True. Barnes, if you're Poch and you know that Mbappe, he's not left this transfer window, but he's probably going to leave in January or sign at least a pre-contract, how do you react to that? How do you play that whole situation?
It's a very difficult one. I would say
you are an Argentinian man with a beard.
I've got the beard bit.
Exactly.
It's a difficult one for Poch because I don't think there is much that he can do to change Kylian Mbappe's mind. Because I hate to say that Leonardo, who's the PSG sporting director, did make a good point, but Mbappe has been sort of saying, I want to be at a club that challenges and that has, big players. And he's like, well, we signed Messi, so Mbappe can't moan anymore. But the reality is that Mbappe wants to go to Real Madrid because, as has been mentioned quite a few times, it's his dream and that's what he wants. In terms of value for money, I think, we've seen Messi move, we've seen Ronaldo move, there's hints at Lewandowski moving, Kane potentially moving. I think, although this deal is absurd because he's got 1 year left on his contract, and ultimately I never really expected it to happen, I think in terms of pure value, I think it's actually probably one of, even if Real Madrid this transfer had gone ahead, it probably does resemble the best value out of all those deals. You think Mbappe's 22? He's probably going to be, once Messi and Ronaldo retire, he's probably going to be the best player in the world. And he's got the next 8 years, the next 10 years. think of 150 million or pounds for the best player in the world. You know, in that amount of time, he's probably only going to get better as well. It is an interesting one, but I think going back to me embodying Poch, I'm really not sure what I could. I don't think there's much chance of him convincing Mbappe to stay. To be honest, I just think he wants out.
Mm-hmm. And Lynchy, Barnes has made a really good point there. A few months is a long time in football. Next summer, you've got potentially Lewandowski, you've got Kane, you've got maybe even Haaland as well. We're looking for moves. Will other clubs come in? Will Real Madrid look elsewhere potentially? Or do you think other clubs might come in for Mbappe during that time when it comes around to January?
I think when it comes, if this deal doesn't go ahead in the next 24 hours, I still think it will definitely happen next season. I think there's been rumours that, Real Madrid have been planning for this deal for years. So I think he is the man they want, and that won't change even next summer. They seem like they're happy to wait if they can't get this deal over the line now to sign the pre-contract agreement in January. So I still think it will happen either now. If it doesn't happen now, it will happen next summer. Don't think they'll look elsewhere because I guess it seems like a match made in heaven in terms of Mbappe. It's his dream to play for Real Madrid. He's one of the best players in the world. Real Madrid, one of the biggest clubs in the world. So I feel like it will happen. It's just a matter of when, not if. But I mean, this whole 5 p.m. deadline today, seems a bit stupid to me. I don't think it's really anything to go by on that because the transfer deadline doesn't end until tomorrow. These just pretty much made up deadlines by the club. The deal could happen still by the end of tomorrow. We don't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think even if he did stay for this season, I don't think it would necessarily. Obviously, it's a huge amount of money for PSG, but I don't think that would matter to them too much just because of the amount of money they seem to have all the time anyway. And if you think about it, if they manage to keep him, based on yesterday's performance, it seems like he won't be overly distracted or not be putting in effort for them, even if he does want to leave or he knows he's going to be leaving soon. And if it would definitely increase their chances of winning the Champions League. So it could actually potentially work out quite well for PSG if he does stay this one more season. Because obviously the signings of Donnarumma's younger player, but signings of Wijnaldum, Ramos and Messi, obviously they're a bit older in their career. So this season's probably the best chance PSG will have of winning the Champions League with all of them players pretty much in their, Ramos and Messi obviously a tiny bit older than Wijnaldum, but they're still obviously great players. And so if they were to keep Mbappe and he would be in that team, it would only increase their chances of winning the Champions League, even if they do risk losing him for free next summer. They look back on it and they won the Champions League because of Mbappe. We saw how important he was for that Monaco team in their run. He pretty much won them games on his own. So, it wouldn't necessarily be bad business if they let him go for free next summer if it meant they potentially win the Champions League. But obviously, that's a big if with teams like Manchester City also.
It's a very good point, and we're rapidly running out of time, so I'll move on to the last sort of topic that we have, and I'm sure we'll do an actual proper transfer window roundup when the window shuts. But just want to spend a little bit of time on. There is about 25, 6, 7 hours left of the transfer window, and I just want to see your guys' thoughts on where some clubs might need to improve, what deals you reckon might go through before the end of the window tomorrow. Chris, are Arsenal even looking at anyone?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I know they're looking to shift a few players and that. I know obviously Reece Nelson, it looks like he's going to go to Feyenoord on loan. It's an interesting one because obviously he wasn't their first choice. Obviously they wanted Ahmad from United, but obviously he picked up an injury. So I think they've gone, it looks like Reece Nelson's going to be available. It's interesting because I think Reece Nelson's going to sign a new deal with Arsenal to keep him at the club till 2023 and then they're going to loan him out. Obviously, I hope he does well out in Feyenoord. I probably would have preferred him going to a stronger league because, the Dutch league isn't as good as what it used to be, and they just haven't kept up money-wise with other leagues and that. But yeah, I wish him the best out on loan. Obviously, it looks as if Willian's going to Corinthians. I think I've heard, I can't remember who tweeted it on Twitter, but I think they said Arsenal have officially terminated his contract, obviously mutual consent. And obviously it looks like he's going to go back to Brazil and play for Corinthians. And obviously, like you mentioned earlier, the whole Ainsley Maitland-Niles, saga and that. And yeah, obviously it looks like Everton are the front runners for him. And again, if he does go out on loan or even if he does go permanently to Everton, I wish him well. I don't think he's had a fair crack at the first team. I don't think he's been given that opportunity, especially under Arteta, to sort of prove what he can do. in terms of like deals that obviously Premier League teams are going to do, and that obviously an interesting one, obviously with it being the Old Firm derby yesterday, was obviously it looks as if like Crystal Palace are going to make a move for odds on Edouard, because again it was one of them that they made Eddie Nketiah their first choice, but I think Arsenal wanting like too much than what Crystal Palace want to pay for him. And I think Palace has gone, right, well, we might as well sign odds on Edouard. And he didn't cover himself in glory yesterday. He did miss that absolute sitter, which he should have absolutely buried for Celtic. And obviously probably should have got a point out of that game, looking how the game ended and that. But I think he would be a good signing for Palace. Like, where you know, he has scored goals. I mean, all right, people say, oh, it's the SPL and whatnot. But, you know, all he needs is a striker that scores goals. And, you know, they should, get goals. I mean, otherwise they're going to carry on the season with Christian Benteke up top, and not only that. Like if Edouard does have one or two good seasons at Palace, then Palace could sell him on for big money, like they did, with Wan-Bissaka and even like Zaha back in the day when obviously he made his big move to Man United. Obviously they got him back in the end, but yeah. I think that would be quite an exciting one if that does go through tomorrow.
Definitely. And we should mention that we finally got a conclusion to the whole Kane saga. He has joined Oxford United. That's Herbie Kane, not Harry Kane. And a superb signing for Oxford United, I must say. But Barnes, with a day left, is there anything that's catching your eye that potentially could be happening or something should be happening?
Well, I have consulted my worldwide scouts, and one interesting one that I've noticed is Ademola Lookman. I think he's been linked to Leicester, which makes absolutely no sense to me, because why would you sell Damari Gray a year ago to Leipzig and then buy Lookman, who's a very similar player? And to make that even more fun, Lookman went from Everton and then played for Fulham, and now he's going to Leicester. So effectively, they're just swapping players. And although having said that, Damari Gray has started very well for Everton, so I will give him some credit there. It's just an odd one. Just sounds like we kind of maybe need to give the fans something. Let's just randomly sign a player. I don't remember Lookman really. He was all right for Fulham. Don't think he pulled up trees. So I wouldn't have thought he'd be starting for Leicester, especially in their system. He's, as far as I'm aware, Ademola Lookman's out and out winger. They normally play wing backs. They play with Mark Albrighton. So I'm not really sure 100% on that one, but it's quite a fun one anyway. Effectively swapping clubs.
And Lynchy, are you happy with Arsenal sort of Chris mentioned it, getting rid of that deadwood, getting rid of the players that are on relatively high wages or that are not going to be anywhere near the first team? Are you happy that you're finally getting rid of those players to make funds for future transfer windows? Is that a good sign, do you think?
I think it's a good sign, but it's long overdue. And I think it still worries me that, like Chris mentioned earlier, you still got players like Kolasinac, Chambers. I mean, in my opinion, El Nene shouldn't be there. He's not good enough. They're still at the club. So Runarsson, the Icelandic goalkeeper, they haven't managed to get rid of everyone that they would like to. And I think that worries me the most, is all these players going out on loan. They're just going to be coming back to the club next season again. It's like when Kolasinac went out on loan, Maitland-Niles went out on loan to West Brom last season. Nelson's been on so many loans now. They are, at the end of the day, they're going to be coming back to the club. We haven't managed to actually get any transfer fees for them yet. And it could just be on our books next season. We will carry on paying their wages. I don't know the ins and outs of all the loan deals and whether, the clubs are paying a fair portion of the wages. I don't know how it works, to be honest with you, whether Arsenal still have to pay some of the wages. It's still slightly worrying that, Willian, he literally had to terminate his contract to find a club. It's probably the best thing he's done for us. Terminate his contract, to be honest with you. But that's the only way that we've managed to get him out of the club. He has to terminate his contract and take like a 70% pay cut to go to Corinthians. So I think there's still much more work to do in terms of finding suitors. Like Chrissy mentioned, the Eddie Nketiah deal, we're asking for too much for him. So it looks like he's going to stay. That's still extra wages on the books, which he's not really going to play this season, likely. I think Balogun would be ahead of him in the pecking order. So I think it's still quite worrying that, the players are leaving out on loan, but they're going to be coming back next season. I can't see many of them players, unless they have some outstanding seasons, the clubs they're going on loan to buying them. And if there is an option for them to buy. In terms of what I'm looking for like the next 24 hours, I'd say. I think Chelsea's quite an interesting one because obviously they've been linked with Jules Koundé quite heavily. Apparently Sevilla now want 80 million euros rather than 50, which they agreed. And then obviously Sal from Atletico Madrid. I mean, if they manage to get both of them deals over the line before the end of the transfer window, I mean, that would put them in an incredibly strong position for the title. I think that would probably overtake them in terms of the best transfer window above Man United in terms of the signings of Sancho, Varane and Ronaldo. I think Chelsea were looking like an extremely strong team, even more strong than they are if they manage to sign those two. I mean, like we mentioned earlier, they were so defensively solid on Saturday, and that was without Koundé. I mean, I think that sign would only improve them further. So I think that's what the main thing I'm be interested to see over the next 24 hours.
Absolutely. And I think on that note, I don't know how Owen ends these. I've done about 15 minutes of my best Owen impression. And now I don't know how he ends these things. I guess he says, make sure you like and follow and subscribe if you've watched on YouTube and Apple Podcasts and Spotify and everything. And I hope Owen comes back soon because this has been really stressful. Just trying to figure out topics of conversation. So Owen, please come back. Don't go for me. He's on 5 Live tomorrow. If you're watching this tonight, we have no idea what time. I don't know if he's put in the chat what time he said he's going to be on. But Owen's making moves. So it might be me or the other boys who are hosting the Early Bar Football podcast in the future. But now I'm rambling. I'm going to try and end this broadcast, end this recording, and we'll see you again very soon. Goodbye.